After work today, I came home to find an extra pair of men's leather shoes by the door, black, shiny, and in a very old-fashioned style. I stood at the entrance for 3 seconds, took out my phone, and snapped a photo. Then I opened the door. In the living room, my 2 sons were sitting on the sofa watching cartoons. Peppa Pig was jumping in muddy puddles, laughing. Ha ha ha. There was a strange man sitting on the sofa. He looked to be in his early 30s, wearing a dark jacket, his hair combed meticulously into place. But on closer look, the cuffs of his jacket were a little worn, and the collar was slightly misshapen, as if he had worn it for a long time but had carefully ironed it. He sat beside my son, looking so natural that it was as if he were in his own home. My wife, Cecilia, came out of the kitchen, wearing an apron, her hands still wet. She came up to me, bent down, and took my slippers out of the shoe cabinet. Then she set them neatly in place. Ben, you're back. You must be tired from work. Then she straightened up and followed my gaze toward the men on the sofa. Oh, this is Jonathan. She paused. He's a friend I grew up with before I turned 14. He used to be my childhood neighbor. Jonathan stood up. He was half a head shorter than me. He reached out his hand, with an expression on his face that I could not quite understand. It was a little like a drowning man grabbing onto the last piece of driftwood. I shook his hand. His hand was very cold, his knuckles prominent, and his palm had rough calluses. Before he could speak, I said first, "Oh, did you come over so suddenly because something happened?" Before I had even let go of his hand, Jonathan spoke. "Benjamin, I didn't come over suddenly." He looked into my eyes, his voice very steady. "I got in touch with Cecilia a few days ago. I only came over today. All these years, I've never forgotten Cecilia. I've been looking for her. I love her. I hope the 2 of you will divorce, so you can give her to me." Chapter 1. The living room fell silent for a moment. Peppa Pig was still laughing. I turned to look at my wife. "Cece, what's going on?" Cecilia froze where she stood, still clutching the strap of her apron. She opened her mouth, her gaze moving back and forth between Jonathan and me twice. Then she walked over and stood beside me, her tone calming down. "Jonathan, stop talking nonsense. What divorce? Are you out of your mind?" Then she turned to me. "Ben, I didn't know he came here to say this, and I didn't invite him over. He found this place on his own. When I opened the door, I only thought it was an old childhood friend coming to meet me. He hasn't even been inside for 20 minutes. Our security door has an entry log. Ben, you can check it." I looked into her eyes. She did not avoid my gaze. I nodded, but to be honest, in that moment, my heartbeat sped up by a few beats. It was not that I did not trust her. It was just that the words, "I hope the 2 of you will divorce," were like a needle. It did not hurt when it pierced in, but you knew it was there. Jonathan suddenly smiled. That smile made me feel uncomfortable, as if he had already prepared his lines. "Cecilia, don't talk like I'm some outsider. We grew up together when you were 14. Cecilia interrupted him. "Jonathan, wait a moment." She took out her phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to me. On the screen was the app record for our home's door lock. "Door opened, 1803. In other words, 20 minutes ago," she said softly to me. "Ben, look for yourself." I did not take the phone. I only glanced at the time. Then I pushed the phone back. I saw it. Good. When Jonathan saw this, the smile on his face shifted slightly. He cleared his throat. "Benjamin, you probably don't know what kind of relationship Cecilia and I used to have. Our families were neighbors. We were together from kindergarten all the way to middle school. When she was bullied by boys as a child, I was the one who stood up for her. When she first learned to ride a bicycle, I was the one holding the bike from behind." Cecilia spoke. "Jonathan, I remember all of that. But that was all when we were children. I moved away when I was 14. We haven't been in contact for almost 13 years. Jonathan shook his head. "It wasn't that we lost contact. It was that after you moved away, you changed your number. I looked for you for many years. I asked all the old neighbors, and I only found you a few days ago." His voice suddenly lowered, as if he were talking to himself. "I searched for you for 13 whole years. Do you know what 13 years means? When I graduated from middle school at 16, my family fell apart." He paused, and his eyes suddenly turned red. "My dad found another woman. My mom remarried and went to another province. Neither side wanted me, so I lived with my grandmother. My grandmother wasn't in good health. I dropped out of high school before finishing and started working. I carried bricks on construction sites, washed dishes in restaurants, delivered packages, and worked as a food delivery rider. One winter, I had a high fever of 40 degrees Celsius. I lay alone in my rented room, with no one beside me to even pour me a glass of water. At that time, I thought, if only Cecilia were here, she would definitely take care of me. That thought alone kept me going for another year." Chapter 2. The living room fell silent. Cecilia's expression changed slightly. It was not moved or touched, it was something more complicated. carrying a trace of sympathy. But that sympathy felt the same as the feeling I get when I see a stray cat on the street. Not love. Jonathan continued. My grandmother passed away the year before last. In this world, I don't have a single family member left anymore. I thought it was finally time to find you. I went from one old neighbor to another asking about you. I asked dozens of people. In the end, I got your new number from your cousin. Cecilia frowned. How did you find me? Jonathan smiled, and there was an indescribable bitterness in that smile. I spent 2,000 yuan hiring someone to investigate. They used your phone number to trace your approximate location. Then I took a train to this city and searched for the landmark that appeared in your WeChat posts. I wandered around that landmark for 3 days before I finally found your residential complex. Then I waited outside the gate for 2 afternoons before I finally saw you come out to buy groceries. I saw you holding your child's hand, smiling beautifully. You looked even prettier than when you were younger. I didn't go up to you at the time because I was afraid of scaring you. I went back to my hotel and thought about it all night before I finally added you on WeChat. After listening, Cecilia stayed silent for 2 seconds. Then she said, Jonathan, I sympathize with everything you said, but sympathizing with you does not mean I'm going to leave with you. Jonathan shook his head. I don't want your sympathy. I want you to remember what you said before. When you were 14, you said you would marry me when we grew up. The moment those words came out, Cecilia's face instantly turned pale. She subconsciously glanced at me. I kept my expression blank, but inside my pocket, my fingers tightened into a fist. I told myself, stay calm. Listen to what she says. Cecilia took a deep breath. Jonathan, those were words I said when I was 14. You're taking childhood make-believe seriously. Jonathan stepped forward. To me, it was real. For these past 13 years, I've never dated anyone. I've never liked anyone else. When I was working odd jobs, people tried introducing women to me, but I rejected all of them, because the only person in my heart was you. You were the reason I kept living. Then he looked at me again. Benjamin, I know you're doing pretty well for yourself now, but I knew her before you did, and my feelings for her run deeper than yours. I hope you can let us be together. Before I could speak, Cecilia spoke first. Jonathan, stop talking nonsense in front of my husband. I never had any romantic relationship with you. A childhood playmate is just a childhood playmate. The only reason I let you into this house today was because we used to be neighbors. But if you keep talking like this, I'll ask you to leave right now. Jonathan looked at her and slowly shook his head. Cecilia, you've changed a lot. You weren't like this before. Cecilia walked over and stood beside me, her tone very calm. Yes, I changed. I grew up, got married, and became the mother of 2 children. I became an adult. It seems like you still haven't grown up, Jonathan. Jonathan took out his phone from his pocket. He tapped through it a few times and turned the screen toward us. Cecilia, look, these are the messages you sent me 2 days ago. I glanced at the screen. It was a WeChat chat window. The contact name was Dear Cecilia, and the profile picture was indeed hers. But there were only a few messages, and every one of them was polite and distant. Hello, is this Jonathan? Long time no see. I'm living on the east side of the city now. It's not convenient for us to meet. We can talk another time if there's a chance. Take care. That was it. Jonathan swiped the screen, as if he wanted to scroll to something else, but there was nothing after that. After Cecilia looked at it, she laughed. That's it. What exactly is wrong with this? You told me you were my childhood neighbor, so I replied with a few polite messages. What's the problem with that? Jonathan's expression finally changed. He had clearly thought those messages would prove something, but they proved absolutely nothing. Chapter 3. That was when I finally spoke. Jonathan, can I take a look? He handed me the phone. I scrolled through the chat history. There really were only those few messages, and the gaps between Cecilia's replies were very long. It was obvious she did not want to continue the conversation. After the final, take care, she never replied again. I handed the phone back to him. So, you want me to divorce my wife over these few messages? Jonathan's smile disappeared. Benjamin, you don't understand. Cecilia was different from everyone else when we were kids. She was especially sensible and gentle. Back then, I had already decided I was going to marry her when we grew up. I searched for almost 13 years before finally finding her. I can't give up now. Cecilia sighed. Jonathan, listen to me. We were both children back then. Everything you're talking about only existed in your own imagination. I never promised you anything. And now I'm married. I have a husband, children, and a very happy life. You come here saying these things. Do you really think that's appropriate? Jonathan lowered his head in silence for a few seconds. Then he looked up again. His eyes were red, and actual tears began falling. Cecilia, I know you probably think I'm acting impulsively, but I'm serious. I don't mind that you have children. I'll treat your kids like my own. I've saved up some money over the years. It's enough to support a family. As long as you're willing, we can start over from the beginning. Cecilia was so exasperated that she laughed. Yes. She was literally laughing out of frustration. She turned to look at me with an expression that was both amused and speechless. Ben, did you hear that? He wants me to take our 2 sons and start over with him. I laughed too. Jonathan, you mentioned you've saved up some money. Mind if I ask how much? Jonathan hesitated for a moment. A little over 500,000 yuan. I nodded. That's pretty good. Living frugally and saving that much is enough to support a small family. But raising 2 sons, that's probably not enough. And my sons aren't going anywhere with someone else. They already have a father. Jonathan clenched his teeth. Benjamin, don't use money to look down on people. Love can't be measured with money. I spread my hands. I'm not the one using money to pressure anyone. You were the one who brought up your savings first. Beside me. Cecilia could not hold it in anymore and burst out laughing. Jonathan's face darkened. He took a deep breath, as though he had finally made some kind of decision. Cecilia, do you remember the day you moved away? Cecilia thought for a moment. I remember. Why? That day. You said something to me. I'm sure you forgot. You said, Jonathan, I'm leaving. You have to come find me in the future. Okay, when I grow up, I'll marry you. Cecilia froze for a second. I said that. You did, and that's why I came. Chapter 4. The living room fell quiet for a while. Cecilia lowered her head and thought for more than 10 seconds before finally looking up again. Jonathan, even if I really did say that, it was still just the innocent words of a little girl. Haven't you ever moved before? When people move away, neighbors always say things like, come visit sometime, or let's stay in touch. But how many people actually mean it? Jonathan shook his head. I don't think it was just politeness. You cried that day. You said you didn't want to leave. Cecilia nodded. Yes, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave that courtyard, that jujube tree, or Grandma Zhang next door, and I didn't want to leave you either. Jonathan's eyes lit up instantly, but Cecilia continued. The problem is, those feelings of not wanting to part weren't all the same. It's like how I miss the toys I had as a child, or the old road I used to walk, or that worn-out school bag. It's not because I loved them, it's because they were part of a period of my life. Jonathan, you were my childhood playmate. You were part of those memories, but you were never my lover. Not once. Jonathan looked as if something had struck him hard. He took a step back and sat down on the sofa again. He stayed silent for a long time. My 2 sons were still watching cartoons. Peppa Pig's family had gone on vacation. I glanced at my wife. Her expression looked calm, but I knew she was already getting impatient. After 5 years of marriage, I could read her micro-expressions perfectly. The way she pressed her lips together, the angle of her raised eyebrows, both were saying the exact same thing. Why is this guy still here? At that moment, Jonathan spoke again. Cecilia, do you think I'm ridiculous? Cecilia did not answer. Her expression remained gentle, but silent. Before I came here, I thought about the possibility that you might already be married, but I didn't expect you to become so. He did not finish the sentence. Cecilia finished it for him. So clear-headed. Jonathan did not deny it. Cecilia sighed softly. Jonathan, it's not that I became clear-headed. I've always been clear-headed. I just didn't show it when I was younger. After I moved away at 14, we never had any contact again. That's normal. A lot of childhood friends drift apart after moving away. The reason you can't let go is because you think it was love, but it wasn't. It was just an obsession. Jonathan looked up at her. How do you know it wasn't? Before Cecilia could answer, I spoke first. Jonathan, let me ask you something. He looked at me. You said you spent almost 13 years searching for Cecilia. How exactly did you search? He froze briefly. I asked old neighbors, one by one. I asked a lot of people. In the end, I got her new number from one of her cousins. I nodded. Then do you know what happened during the 8 years after Cecilia moved away? Jonathan shook his head. She continued through middle school and high school and eventually got into university. She earned scholarships for 2 consecutive years during college. After graduation, she found a job and met me there. We dated for 2 years. We even broke up once in the middle of it before getting back together. Before getting married, we had 3 serious conversations about money, parenting, and personal boundaries. You know absolutely none of that. All you know is the 14-year-old Cecilia, the courtyard, the jujube tree, the little girl who cried whenever she fell down. But you have no idea what she became after her 20s. You don't know what foods she likes or dislikes. You don't know what she's allergic to. You don't know what kind of dreams wake her up in the middle of the night. You don't know how she survived the period when she struggled with postpartum depression. You don't know how many promotions she gave up in order to take care of our 2 children. There are too many things you don't know. The person you love isn't Cecilia. It's a shadow that only exists in your memories. After I finished speaking, Jonathan fell silent. Cecilia said nothing, but quietly reached over and held my hand. Her palm was slightly damp. I knew it was sweat from nervousness. Truthfully, I was nervous too. My palm was sweaty as well. I just made sure she couldn't feel it. Chapter 5. Jonathan stayed silent for about 30 seconds. Then he smiled again. This smile was different from the ones before. The earlier smiles had been deliberate, rehearsed, purposeful. This one looked more like a bitter smile. You're right, Benjamin. I don't know those things, but I can learn them. I can face those things together with her. I can help raise the children together with her. I don't think any of that is a problem. Cecilia let go of my hand. She stepped forward and stood directly in front of Jonathan. Jonathan, do you think that as long as you're willing, don't mind, or can do it, I'm supposed to be overwhelmed with gratitude? Jonathan froze. You just said, I don't mind that you have children. What gives you the right to not mind? They're my children. What exactly do I need your approval for? And you said, I'll treat your children like my own. My children don't need you to treat them like your own. They already have their own father. Everything you said sounds romantic on the surface, but every sentence actually tells me one thing, that you think you're doing me some kind of favor. Jonathan opened and closed his mouth. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Cecilia's tone remained calm, but she spoke much faster now. You said you don't mind because you see having children as some kind of flaw or disadvantage, and you think you're generously overlooking it. You said you'd treat them like your own because you think you'd be taking responsibility for me. But did it ever occur to you that, to me, my children are not a disadvantage at all? They are my whole world. I do not need anyone to not mind them. Jonathan's expression finally changed completely. This time, he said nothing. Cecilia continued, Jonathan, you came to my house today and said all these things. Did you ever think about what position that puts me in front of my husband? What kind of woman are you making me out to be? A woman who would abandon her husband and children at any moment for a childhood playmate? Jonathan immediately shook his head. No, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? You knew perfectly well that I'm married and have children, and yet you came to my house and said, I hope you get divorced, right in front of my husband. Do you think that's respecting me? You don't respect me at all. The only thing you respect is the version of Cecilia that exists inside your own head. That obedient, gentle 14-year-old girl. But that little girl no longer exists. She grew up. She became an adult woman who gets angry, who refuses to obey people, and who has her own opinions. You don't know this woman. The living room became silent again. My older son walked over and hugged my leg. My younger son was still sitting on the sofa, staring at the adults with wide eyes. Cecilia lowered her head to look at our older son and crouched down to stroke his hair. It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy is just talking with a guest. My older son glanced at Jonathan, then looked at me. Then he tightened his grip around my leg. Even a 5-year-old child could sense that something was wrong. Jonathan's expression changed again. It was no longer that bitter smile from before. Now it looked gloomy. Cecilia, you said I don't respect you. Fine. Then let me speak plainly. When I found you, I also found out a few other things. Your husband Benjamin worked at a state-owned enterprise 10 years ago. Back then, his supervisor's surname was Wu, a woman. This director Wu later went to prison for financial crimes. Back then, Benjamin was very close to that older woman with the surname Wu. That's how he got the chance to become a deputy division-level official at 30, and a full division-level official at 33. Cecilia's expression changed instantly. Not panic, anger. Chapter 6. She looked at me, and I shook my head. She understood immediately. I turned to Jonathan. Go on. Jonathan paused, as if organizing his thoughts. I know an old neighbor who was acquainted with your father-in-law. Back then, your father-in-law didn't move because of a work transfer. He moved here to hide from debt. You didn't know that, did you? I looked at Jonathan for 2 seconds, then I smiled. But honestly, in that instant, my heart skipped slightly. Not because I believed him. It was because I suddenly remembered something. Before the wedding, my father-in-law once drank with me. After too much alcohol, he had muttered, back then, if we hadn't escaped in time, and then stopped himself. At the time, I did not pay attention to it. Now those words resurfaced in my mind. I told myself, even if it's true, so what? But the thought buzzed briefly like a fly. I crushed it immediately. Jonathan, did you come here to confess your love, or to blackmail us? Jonathan shook his head. Neither. I came here so you would understand. I didn't come unprepared. I nodded. Understood. I took out my phone and tapped a few numbers. I did not make the call. I simply turned the lit-up screen toward him. Would you like to keep talking? I can record the rest too. Jonathan stared at the screen for 2 seconds. Go ahead and report me. Am I speaking facts or not? I put my phone away. Whether what you said is true or not doesn't matter. What matters is that the moment you chose to say these things, you stopped being the Jonathan Cecilia knew as a child. You became someone else. Jonathan's expression darkened further. He had not expected me to respond like that. At that moment, Cecilia spoke, her voice cold. My husband has far stronger boundaries than you do. Yes, that female supervisor once had feelings for him, but he kept himself disciplined and absolutely clear-headed. When she was arrested, We weren't even married yet, and my husband hadn't been promoted either. As for the details, I have no reason to explain them to you. And my father moved because of a work transfer. Debt? Debt to whom? Say it clearly. Jonathan opened his mouth but could not answer. What you heard was gossip from an old neighbor. You didn't even verify it before using it as leverage. What? Did you think you could intimidate my husband with this and somehow make me leave with you? Jonathan clenched his fists. Everything I said is true. Whether it's true or not has nothing to do with you. Cecilia cut him off. Even if my father really had debts back then, so what? That's our family's business. What exactly are you trying to tell me by bringing this up? That you have dirt on me? Or that you think you have the right to interfere with my parents' affairs too? Jonathan was rendered speechless. He looked like a tree that had been uprooted, ready to collapse at any moment. I took my keys out of my pocket and placed them on the shoe cabinet. Jonathan, what exactly were you hoping to accomplish by coming here today? He stayed silent for a while. I wanted Cecilia to come back to me. She was never with you to begin with. I looked directly into his eyes. You two had no contact for 13 years. An entire youth passed between you. You don't even know what kind of drinks she likes, and yet you talk about her coming back. Coming back to where? Back to 14 years old. Then why don't you go back to your 14-year-old height and weight too? Chapter 7. Cecilia could not hold it in anymore and laughed again. Jonathan's face turned ashen. Benjamin, you don't need to mock me. The reason I can stand here today is because I'm more sincere than you are. And my sincerity is this. I can wait for her. I can wait forever if I have to. As long as she's willing. I'll wait. The moment he said that, Cecilia's expression changed. Not moved. Annoyed. She said, Jonathan, do you think you're being romantic? Jonathan froze for a second. You think the word wait carries a lot of weight, don't you? But did you ever ask whether I even want you to wait for me? Whether you wait or not is your business. If you choose not to wait and walk away, I lose absolutely nothing. If you choose to stand still and keep waiting, I'll still continue living my life exactly the same. You could wait 10 years or 20 years, and it would not affect me in the slightest. The only effect is that you wasted 10 or 20 years of your own life. You think you're making sacrifices for me, but you're actually making sacrifices for yourself, because what you're satisfying is your own desire to wait, not my wishes. I never once asked you to wait for me. Not once. Jonathan's lips trembled. His hands were trembling too. It looked as though his entire sense of self had been dismantled. I looked at him and suddenly felt a trace of pity, but only for 1 second, because this man had just tried to tear my family apart. My older son was still hugging my leg. I bent down and picked him up. He rested against my shoulder and whispered softly, Daddy, who is that person? Just an uncle. Why is he in our house? He's leaving soon. I patted my son gently on the back. Then I looked up at Jonathan. Did you hear that? My son is asking why you're in his house. Jonathan stared at the child lying against his father's shoulder, and for the first time, cracks finally appeared in his expression. Perhaps he had finally realized something. Cecilia was no longer that little girl from years ago. She was a mother now, and the children of that mother would never welcome a stranger who wanted to take their father's place. Jonathan finally walked toward the door. He bent down, picked up his leather shoes, and put them on. His hands were still shaking. Cecilia stood nearby without saying a word. Neither of us saw him out. My older son rested on my shoulder, while my younger son climbed off the sofa and ran to cling to Cecilia's leg. After Jonathan finished putting on his shoes, he turned around. Cecilia, every word I said today was sincere. Cecilia looked at him calmly, her tone neither warm nor cold. I know you were sincere. You sincerely believed that you loved me, but just because something is sincere doesn't mean it's right. Jonathan opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something else. At that moment, the doorbell rang. He froze. So did I. Cecilia walked over and looked through the peephole. Then she turned back to look at me with a strange expression. Ben, it's the building security guard. He says someone downstairs reported a noise complaint. I laughed softly. I didn't call them. Cecilia laughed too. Neither did I. At the same time, both of us looked toward Jonathan. Jonathan shook his head. I didn't call them either. Cecilia opened the door, and the security guard stood outside. Hello, residents. Someone downstairs complained that your apartment was too noisy, so we came to check. Cecilia stepped aside slightly so the guard could see into the living room. As you can see, our home is very quiet. The children are just watching television. There's no disturbance. The guard glanced around the apartment. Then he looked at Jonathan. He probably sensed that the atmosphere was strange. Maybe there was some misunderstanding. Sorry for bothering you. The guard turned to leave, but Cecilia stopped him. One moment. This gentleman is leaving now. Could you please escort him to the elevator? The guard nodded and looked at Jonathan. Jonathan stood at the doorway, awkwardly trapped between staying and leaving. He looked at Cecilia, then at me. In the end, he said nothing. He simply followed the guard away. Chapter 8. The door closed. Cecilia leaned against it and let out a long breath. I'm exhausted. She pulled out her phone, opened WeChat, found Jonathan's profile picture, blocked him, and deleted him, all in one smooth motion. Then she opened her call history, found the unfamiliar number, and did the same thing. After finishing, she tossed her phone onto the sofa. Ben, dinner's not finished yet. Keep the boys company for a while. I'm going back to cooking. I looked at her. You're not going to explain? She froze for a second. Explain what? How did he find our address? Cecilia thought for a moment. My aunt probably gave him some clues. At first, I didn't know it was him. A stranger added me on WeChat and said he was an old childhood neighbor. So after thinking about it, I accepted. Later he asked me what city I lived in, and I told him. Then he asked which district, but I didn't answer. Still, he probably figured something out from the photos in my WeChat posts. There are night view photos taken outside our apartment window. That landmark building is too recognizable. He probably tracked us down through that. I nodded. All right, go ahead. I'll stay with the boys. Cecilia turned and walked into the kitchen. Our younger son followed behind her like a little shadow. The older one climbed off me and went back to watching television. I sat on the sofa and picked up Cecilia's phone for a look. She really had deleted everything thoroughly. Then I took out my own phone and opened an app. It showed the footage from the camera outside our front door. 18:01, Jonathan appeared outside the apartment. 18:03, Cecilia opened the door, visibly startled when she saw him. Then she stepped aside and let him in. No hug, no handshake, no unnecessary physical contact. Just the normal reaction of someone unexpectedly encountering an old acquaintance. I put my phone away. Truthfully, I did not even need to check, but I checked anyway. Not because I distrusted her, but because I wanted to see how she handled everything from beginning to end. What she said was true, every single word, and she had handled it even more decisively than I expected. I spent around 10 minutes watching cartoons with my sons. Then my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered it. Benjamin, it's me, Jonathan. I paused for a second. How did he even get my number? Go ahead. Jonathan stayed silent on the other end for 3 or 4 seconds. Do you know why Cecilia reacted so strongly? Because she feels guilty. I laughed softly. Keep going. When she was little, she said she liked me more than once. Back then, she used to wait outside every morning so we could walk to school together. She remembers all those things, but she doesn't dare admit them, because if she admits them, she can't justify the life she has now. I looked at the pink cartoon pig on the television screen. Jonathan, how old are you this year? 30. You're 2 years older than Cecilia. Yeah, all right. Then let me ask you something. Do you remember what toy you loved the most when you were 6 years old? He hesitated briefly. Transformers. Do you still like them now? Silence filled the other end of the line. When you were 6 years old, you genuinely loved Transformers, but when you turned 30 and stopped liking them, that was genuine too. People's feelings change. Maybe Cecilia really did like you when she was 14, but the fact that she loved me after she turned 22 is real too. You're trying to use the feelings of a 14-year-old girl to emotionally blackmail the woman she became after 22. Who do you think is the one truly disrespecting her? There was no sound from the other side. Jonathan, you came to my house today and said a lot of things, but did you notice something? From beginning to end, you never once asked Cecilia a single question. You never asked whether she actually wanted to leave with you. All you did was tell me that you hoped I would divorce her and hand her over to you. What exactly do you think Cecilia is? Some kind of object that can simply be transferred from one person to another. Chapter 9. Heavy breathing came from the other end of the phone. Very heavy breathing. Jonathan, do you know why I was able to marry my wife? Because before we got married, we talked through everything. How to manage money, how to raise children, how to take care of our parents, and also, how to maintain boundaries. What are boundaries? I'll give you an example. If a male friend develops feelings for her, she immediately tells him she's married. If he still refuses to back off, she blocks and deletes him. If he shows up at our house, she asks him to leave immediately. So why were you able to walk into our home today? Not because she wanted to see you. It was because she had no idea you came here to stir up trouble. She thought you were just an old childhood friend visiting after many years. The moment she opened the door to you, you had already crossed the line, and the moment she realized it, she immediately started dealing with it. You're calling me right now thinking I'm angry. I'm not angry, because my wife handled everything very well today. She handled it even better than I expected. At last, a voice came from the other end, very low, as if squeezed out through clenched teeth. You don't deserve her. I laughed. That's not your decision. She's the one who decides. The call disconnected. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and continued watching Peppa Pig with my sons. But that night, after the boys had gone to sleep, I went out onto the balcony alone. I lit a cigarette. I do not smoke often, but we keep a pack at home for the occasional moments when the pressure gets heavy. That night, I smoked too. During the first cigarette, I just sat there. During the second one, I said something to myself. Benjamin, your heart was racing earlier, not because I distrusted Cecilia, but because the moment Jonathan said, I hope you get divorced, an image flashed through my mind. An empty living room, no Cecilia laughing, no two little boys running around, just me. The image existed for less than a second, but I caught it, and it made me realize something. I was not nearly as calm as I looked. I was only pretending to be calm, because if I panicked, Cecilia would panic even more. I exhaled a cloud of smoke and watched it scatter into the night wind. Then I crushed the cigarette out and returned to the bedroom. Cecilia was still awake, leaning against the headboard while looking at her phone. She glanced at me. You smoked? Yeah. Feeling upset? I thought about it for a moment. A little. But not because of you. Because of him. Cecilia put her phone down. I know. You acted steady in front of me, but when you changed your shoes earlier, you stepped into them twice. I froze. You noticed? Every time you're nervous, you step into your shoes twice. We've been married for 5 years. Did you really think I wouldn't know? I sat down beside the bed and laughed softly. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I couldn't undermine you. You needed to stay composed in front of Jonathan. So I helped you stay composed. But when you came back, I knew you needed a cigarette. I looked at her. Cece. There really was a moment when I got scared. Scared of what? Scared that you might hesitate. Cecilia reached out and held my hand. I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. I know. But I was still afraid. Because you care about me. That's why you were afraid. Cecilia leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder. Ben, you don't have to pretend in front of me anymore. You can panic. You can get angry. You can be jealous. But you have to trust me. I nodded. Okay. Chapter 10. That night, I fell asleep later than usual. Not because of what Jonathan said, but because I realized something. The reason I was able to appear so calm and capable was because Cecilia had quietly protected the foundation beneath me. She handled everything so decisively that I never needed to lose my temper. She drew boundaries so quickly that I never needed to feel jealous. The moment she said, Ben, check the door entry record, I knew I did not need to question anything. It was not because I was exceptional. It was because she was. I turned over and looked at her sleeping face, then quietly whispered, thank you. She did not wake up, but the corner of her lips moved slightly, almost as if she smiled in her sleep. The next day was Saturday. I went out to buy groceries and dropped the boys off at their weekend classes on the way. My older son took drawing lessons, while the younger one studied music. On the way back, I received a phone call. It was my father-in-law. Ben, I heard someone came to your house yesterday. I frowned slightly. Dad, who told you that? Cecilia's aunt told me. She said some childhood neighbor of hers showed up and said a bunch of nonsense. Cecilia told me not to interfere, but I still needed to ask. Is everything all right? I thought for a moment. It's fine, Dad. Don't worry. Cecilia handled it very well. That's good. My father-in-law paused. Ben, there's something I need to tell you. Hear me out first, and don't tell Cecilia. What is it? Back then, we really didn't move because of a job transfer. We owed some money. It wasn't anything huge, and we paid it back later. But Cecilia doesn't know. She always thought I transferred here after a promotion. Her aunt can't keep her mouth shut. That guy probably heard it from her. All right, Dad, I understand. I won't tell Cecilia, but you have to promise me something. What is it? If anyone asks your sister about our family again, can you tell her not to share our private information anymore? My father-in-law sighed. All right, I'll talk to her. After hanging up, I stood outside the market entrance for about a minute. Then I walked in and bought pork ribs, fish, and vegetables. When I got home, Cecilia was wiping the floor. She wore casual home clothes, her hair tied up, and knee pads strapped over her knees. I changed my shoes and carried the groceries into the kitchen. Your back isn't great. Don't scrub the floor. Wait until I come home next time. Without even lifting her head, she asked, did you buy ribs? Yeah. For soup? Sure. Add extra corn. Got it. I tied on an apron and started washing vegetables. After Cecilia finished wiping the floor, she washed her hands and came over to help peel garlic. The kitchen was quiet, filled only with the sound of running water and chopping vegetables. After a while, Cecilia suddenly said, Ben, my aunt called me today. What did she say? She said she didn't know Jonathan came over to say all those things. She thought he just wanted to reconnect. I told her not to give my contact information to anyone else in the future. She said she knew she was wrong. I nodded while cutting the ribs. That's enough then. Do you believe her? You're worth believing. Cecilia stopped what she was doing. Ben, if someone really likes me, what's the right way to handle it while maintaining boundaries? I thought about it for a moment. You already handled it well. I don't think it was enough. Cecilia looked at me seriously. After what happened yesterday, I feel like I should have noticed the warning signs earlier. When he added me on WeChat and asked which district I lived in, I should have been more alert, and I shouldn't have posted those night view photos. I was too careless. I put down the knife and turned around. Cece. You already did very well. You can't expect yourself to predict the future. You had no way of knowing that the person adding you on WeChat would come confessing his feelings. You had no way of knowing that posting a photo would expose our location. You can't handle every situation perfectly, but what matters is this. The moment he crossed the line, you immediately drew a boundary, and you did that. Cecilia looked at me, her eyes turning slightly red. Was I really good enough? You really were. She wiped her eyes and laughed. All right, enough emotional talk. Go back to cutting vegetables. We still haven't finished making dinner. I laughed too and turned back to continue cooking. Chapter 11. 3 days passed. I thought the matter was over, but Jonathan did not disappear. That afternoon, Cecilia went to pick up the children from kindergarten. When she came back, her expression looked off. Ben, what happened? Jonathan showed up again. I put down the remote control in my hand. Where? At the kindergarten entrance. He stood across the street watching me. I ignored him, picked up the kids, and left, but he followed me for about 200 meters. I stopped and turned around to look at him, and then he stopped too. I told him, Jonathan, if you keep following me, I'm calling the police. He said, I just wanted to see you. I told him, you've seen me now, you can leave. Then I walked away quickly with the children. He didn't follow after that. After saying this, Cecilia put her bag down on the sofa and sat down. Ben, what should we do? I thought for a moment. Did you take a picture of him? I did. She took out her phone and showed me. Across the road, Jonathan stood beneath a tree. He was still wearing that dark jacket, his hair still meticulously combed, but he had grown noticeably thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, like someone who had not slept for days. I stared at the photo in silence for several seconds. If he shows up again, call the police immediately. Don't talk to him. Don't even look at him. Just call 110. Cecilia nodded. That's what I was thinking too, but I was wondering whether I should change the kindergarten pickup route. No need. I shook my head. If you change it, he'll just find the new one. With people like this, the only solutions are either making him completely give up or letting the police speak to him. Cecilia sighed. You're right. The next day, Jonathan appeared again. This time, he was standing outside the entrance of our residential complex. When Cecilia came home from work, he stood beside the security booth, holding a bouquet of flowers, red roses. The moment Cecilia saw him, she did not stop walking. She headed straight toward the entrance. Jonathan hurried forward 2 steps. Cecilia. The security guard blocked him immediately. Sir, you're not a resident here. You can't enter. Jonathan stood outside the gate, holding the bouquet in his hands. Cecilia, I just want to say one thing. Cecilia stopped and turned back to look at him. Go ahead. I've thought a lot these past few days. You were right. I don't understand who you are now, but I can get to know you. Give me one chance. Let's sit down and have a meal together. Just talk. Just one meal. If after that meal you still think it's impossible, I'll leave immediately. Cecilia looked at him without the slightest ripple in her expression. Jonathan, you don't need to invite me to dinner. I can give you the answer right now. No. Whether it's today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now, the answer will stay the same. I'm already married. I have an excellent husband and lovely children. No one's appearance in my life is going to change that. You should leave. Then she turned and walked away. Jonathan stood there at the gate while the bouquet slowly drooped downward in his hand. The security guard looked at him and said, Sir, you heard her. Time to go. Jonathan stood there for about a minute before finally placing the flowers on top of the security booth counter and leaving. That night, Cecilia told me everything. I said, You handled it very well. She replied, I originally wanted to call the police immediately. Then why didn't you? Because he didn't do anything aggressive. He just stood outside the gate. He didn't force his way in or make a scene. I was worried that even if the police came, they wouldn't be able to do much. I nodded. You're right. But if there's a next time, call the police no matter what. Even if he doesn't act aggressively, at the very least, there should be an official record. Okay. Chapter 12. Another 5 days passed. Jonathan did not appear. I thought he had finally given up. But on the 6th night, I received a text message. An unfamiliar number. Benjamin, I won't give up. You can call the police, curse me, or look down on me. But Cecilia is the only thing I've held onto in this life. Without her, my life has no meaning. I read the message and did not reply. I took a screenshot of the number and saved it. Then I told Cecilia about it. After reading it, Cecilia stayed silent for a long time. Ben, do you think he might do something stupid? You're worried about him. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried that if something happens to him, people will blame us. His relatives and the old neighbors will all say it was my fault. I thought about it for a moment. You're right. That's exactly why we need to contact the police. Not to have him arrested, but to leave an official record, to prove that we never provoked him, threatened him, or did anything excessive. He's the one harassing us. Cecilia nodded. Okay, I'll go to the police station tomorrow. The next day, Cecilia went to the local police station. The officer on duty listened to everything and filed a report. The officer said, at the moment, his behavior doesn't qualify for public security punishment, but we can give him a warning call. Cecilia replied, thank you. That same afternoon, the officer called Jonathan. No one knew what was said, but after that, Jonathan disappeared for 10 days. No text messages, no phone calls, no appearances outside the kindergarten or the apartment complex. I thought the matter was finally over, but on the 11th day, Cecilia's aunt called again. Cece, that Jonathan came to see me again. He came to my house crying his eyes out. He said he misses you so much that he can't bear it anymore. He said if he doesn't see you one last time, he won't be able to keep living. I told him you're already married, but he said he knows that and still can't let go. I felt sorry for him, so I comforted him a little. He said he just wants to see you one last time, apologize face to face, and then leave. After hearing that, Cecilia said, Auntie, you cannot let him contact me anymore. I've already received his apology. There's no need to meet. Tell him that if he keeps trying to contact me, I'll apply for a restraining order, and when that happens, the police won't be looking for me. They'll be looking for him. Her aunt sighed on the other end of the line. Cece, just meet him once. He really looks pitiful. Auntie. Cecilia's voice turned cold. The fact that he's pitiful is not something I caused. It's the result of his own choices. I can't destroy my family just because I feel sorry for him. When you speak up for him, have you ever considered how I feel? If Benjamin misunderstood me, my family could fall apart, and if that happened, who would feel sorry for me? Her aunt fell silent. After a long while, she finally said, all right, I understand now. I won't interfere anymore. After hanging up, Cecilia threw her phone onto the sofa. I'm so angry. My aunt has absolutely no sense of boundaries. She always thinks feeling sorry for someone is the same thing as being kind. But she doesn't realize that pitying someone can sometimes harm yourself, and harm them too. I sat beside her without speaking. Cecilia glanced at me. Why aren't you saying anything? I'm thinking about something. What? Jonathan doesn't have any family left anymore. His grandmother passed away, and his parents abandoned him. For the past 13 years, he hasn't really lived a normal life. He placed all his hope onto you. So when you rejected him, to him it felt like the complete denial of the entire meaning of those 13 years. Cecilia looked at me. Are you feeling sorry for him? I'm not feeling sorry for him. I'm analyzing him. Feeling sorry for him would make us soften, and if we soften, we'll give him hope, and giving him hope will only make him sink deeper. In the end, it would hurt him, and hurt us too, so we cannot pity him. Chapter 13. Cecilia nodded. You think more clearly than I do. No, you act more clearly than I do. I only think about things. You're the one standing on the front line dealing with them. Another week passed. Jonathan did not appear again. I thought he had finally left for good, but one day, while scrolling through her phone, Cecilia suddenly froze. Ben, look at this. She handed me her phone. It was one of Jonathan's social media posts. Wait, hadn't she already blocked and deleted him? My cousin sent it to me. I took the phone and looked. Jonathan had posted a picture from an airport. The caption read, leaving the city where I waited for 13 years. Some people are destined to exist only in memories. Take care. Someone commented below. What happened? Jonathan replied, a relationship that never even began has finally ended. After reading it, Cecilia's expression became complicated. Is he performing some tragic deep love act now? I handed the phone back to her. What do you think? I think he's performing for himself. Why? Because if someone had truly let go, they wouldn't post something like this. Real closure happens quietly. When someone posts a dramatic announcement for everyone to see, the hidden message is basically, please ask me what happened so I can tell a long emotional story. Cecilia laughed. That's exactly right. That's why blocking him was necessary. He'll disappear on his own eventually, because his performance of devotion needs an audience. And now he doesn't have one anymore. Cecilia took the phone back. My cousin said she feels sorry for Jonathan. What did you say? I told her that being pitiful isn't a free pass. Just because he's pitiful doesn't mean he gets to destroy my family. I nodded. What did your cousin say? She said I was taking things too seriously, that he was just confessing his feelings. So I told her, try having a man show up at your house and tell your husband to divorce you right in front of you. Then you can decide whether it's serious or not. I laughed. And what did your cousin say after that? She stopped replying. 1 week later, Cecilia and I lay in bed together at night. Both boys were already asleep. The air conditioner was set to 24 degrees, and the blanket covered us up to our chests. Cecilia turned over to face me. Ben, I want to ask you something. Go ahead. If I hadn't handled things properly that day, what would you have done? I thought about it. What level of not handling it properly are we talking about? For example, if I had hesitated about what? Hesitated over whether I should leave with him. I stayed silent for 3 seconds. If you had hesitated, I would have known. And then we would sit down and talk. Talk about what? About why you hesitated. About whether there were unresolved problems between us. If it was a problem between us, then we would solve it together. If it wasn't a problem between us, but something inside you, then you would have to solve it yourself. And what if I couldn't solve it? I looked up at the ceiling. Then we wouldn't be able to keep going. Chapter 14. Cecilia did not say anything. Do you remember that long conversation we had before getting married? I remember. You said something back then. You said, Cecilia finished the sentence for me. I can accept that you might not love me anymore, but I can't accept you saying you love me while acting ambiguously with someone else. Right. And I also said that the password to our home should only be known by the two of us. Cecilia nodded. And that if anyone was coming to the house, we should notify each other in advance, even if it's our parents. Right. We made a whole list of rules back then. It wasn't because I was afraid you'd cheat on me. It was because I knew cracks in a marriage always begin with tiny things. Thinking there's nothing wrong with having dinner alone with someone of the opposite sex. Thinking there's nothing wrong with chatting with an ex. Thinking there's nothing wrong with getting drunk and being escorted home. Thinking there's nothing wrong with hugging someone while crying. Thinking there's nothing wrong with holding hands for a second. Thinking there's nothing wrong with kissing someone on the cheek. And by the time someone thinks sleeping together is nothing serious, it's already too late. Cecilia buried her face into the pillow. When you said those things back then, I thought you were too rational, but later I realized you were right. Boundaries are not chains that restrict freedom, they are walls that protect freedom. A courtyard without walls gets trampled by everyone. I gently stroked her hair. Cecilia. Thank you. For what? For not hesitating that day. Cecilia lifted her face from the pillow and looked at me. It's not that I didn't hesitate. It's that the idea of hesitating never even crossed my mind. The moment Jonathan said those words, there was only one thought in my head. What thought? Oh no, what if my husband misunderstands me? I laughed. To be fair, I really didn't misunderstand you, but I did think about something. What? I wondered what you would think if one day some woman showed up at our door saying she'd loved me for years. Cecilia sat upright. And what do you think I would do? I looked at her. You'd open the door, let her in, listen to everything she had to say, and then calmly tell her, Benjamin is my husband, please leave. Cecilia shook her head. You're wrong. I wouldn't even let her inside. I'd listen to her at the doorway and then say, all right, got it, goodbye. And then I'd shut the door. There wouldn't even be a door entry record. I froze for a second. You're better than me. Cecilia lay back down again. Obviously, because I'm your wife. I turned off the light. The room fell into darkness. The quiet hum of the air conditioner filled the space. About 15 minutes passed, and I thought Cecilia had fallen asleep. Then she suddenly spoke again. Ben. Do I count as a virtuous wife? I laughed out loud. Of course. Without you holding this family together, how could a country boy like me possibly become a division-level official at 33? Go to sleep. Good night. Chapter 15. 1 month later, Cecilia's aunt came to visit our home. She brought a carton of milk and a bag of fruit. Sitting on the sofa, she looked around the apartment. Cece, your house is so clean. Cecilia poured her a glass of water. Auntie, have some water. Her aunt accepted the glass and looked at me. Ben, you weren't angry that day, were you? I smiled slightly. Angry about what? That Jonathan boy. I wasn't the one who introduced him to you. He found his way there himself. He just asked me what city Cece was living in. I didn't give him the exact address. He probably figured the rest out on his own. Cecilia listened quietly from the side without saying anything. Then her aunt went on talking about random gossip from back home. Whose son had gotten married, whose daughter had gotten divorced, whose family had a chubby baby boy. When she was about to leave, she grabbed Cecilia's hand. Cece, let Auntie say one more thing. That Jonathan, he's actually a pitiful child. His parents divorced years ago, and both of them started new families with new children. He was left living with his grandmother the whole time. After his grandmother passed away 2 years ago, he was completely alone. The reason he looked for you was probably because he had no family left and needed some kind of emotional support. After he went back, he became seriously ill. He stayed in the hospital alone for more than 10 days. There wasn't even anyone there to take care of him. Auntie visited him once. He had become so thin he barely looked human anymore. After listening, Cecilia stayed silent for 2 seconds. Auntie, the fact that he's pitiful is not my fault. There are many pitiful people in the world. I can't become emotional support for every one of them. I have my own family and my own responsibilities. Her aunt sighed. That's true. Auntie won't interfere anymore. After seeing her aunt off, Cecilia closed the door. Then she leaned against it and let out a breath. Ben, do you think I'm too cold-hearted? I looked at her. If you weren't cold-hearted toward him, then you'd be unfair to yourself, to me, and to our sons. Cecilia thought about it. That's true too. She picked up the mop and cleaned the floor where her aunt had walked. Not out of disgust. It was simply her habit. That night before bed, Cecilia scrolled through her phone. Suddenly she made a small sound. What's wrong? Jonathan deleted my cousin too. He's completely disappeared now. Maybe he found a new emotional anchor. Cecilia placed the phone on the bedside table. I just hope whoever becomes that new emotional anchor doesn't end up being disturbed by him too. I looked at her. You're still thinking about him? She shook her head. No, I was just thinking. Thinking what? If Jonathan had understood boundaries from the beginning, he never would have come looking for me. If Auntie had boundaries, she never would have shared my information with someone who was basically a stranger. And if I had stronger boundaries, I would have shut the door the moment he said his first inappropriate sentence. You already handled it well, but I could have handled it better. Cecilia turned over and stared at the ceiling. If something like this ever happens again, I'll close the door before the first inappropriate sentence even comes out. You're sure you'll be able to tell? I will. How? A man's eyes can't lie. When Jonathan stood at the door, I should have realized it. The way he looked at me wasn't the way someone looks at an old neighbor. It was the look of someone staring at a treasure he thought he had recovered after losing it. At the time, I felt something was off, but I told myself maybe he was just an overly enthusiastic person. I shouldn't have thought that. I should have trusted my instincts. I looked at the side of her face. All right, next time, trust your instincts, but hopefully there won't be a next time. Cecilia laughed. Then you have to promise me something. Promise what? That you'll never let any woman who's interested in you into our home. I promise. Not just the house. No adding them on WeChat either. No eating alone together. No talking privately about work unless other co-workers are present. And you have to tell me immediately. I will. And I'll tell you immediately too. Chapter 16. We repeated those words again like a ritual chant. 3 days before our wedding, we had said almost the exact same things. Back then, we sat on the bed in our tiny rented apartment with a blank sheet of paper spread out in front of us. On that sheet, we had written many boundary agreements. Then we signed our names and pressed our fingerprints onto it. That paper is still locked inside a drawer even now. Not because we are afraid the other person will break the agreement, but because it was the first brick of our marriage. The next day, Cecilia took that paper out from the drawer. The once white paper had already yellowed slightly with age. The handwriting on it was mine, written in blue ballpoint pen. Rule 1. The password to the home belongs only to the two of us until the children grow up. No one else may know it. Rule 2. Any friend of the opposite sex visiting the house must be disclosed in advance, and the other person must agree before they are allowed in. Rule 3. Any private meal alone with a person of the opposite sex must be reported beforehand, and private rooms or secluded spaces are not allowed. Rule 4. Exes, first loves, flirtatious connections, and similar people must not be kept in contact. If contact occurs, the married status must be clearly stated. Rule 5. Chat histories with the opposite sex should not be deliberately deleted, because deleting them is what creates suspicion. Rule 6. If any of the above agreements are violated, the other person has the right to reevaluate the marriage. Our two signatures were written side by side beneath the rules. Under Cecilia's signature, she had drawn a tiny little heart. Back then, she was 23 years old and still carried traces of girlish innocence. Now when she signs her name, she no longer draws hearts. Instead, she can block and delete a boundary-crossing person within a single second. Much more useful than a heart. I folded the paper carefully and placed it back into the drawer. Keep it. We can show it to our sons in the future. Cecilia nodded and closed the drawer. Ben, do you think Jonathan will come back again? I thought for a moment. No. Why? Because he's already realized something. What? The Cecilia in his memories and the real Cecilia are not the same person. The Cecilia he loved only existed in his memories. When he came looking for you, he was trying to turn memory into reality, but reality slapped him in the face. Now he understands that the real Cecilia is not the person he imagined. Cecilia stayed silent for a while. When you put it that way, I almost feel sorry for him again. You can feel sorry for him, but don't let him know that. Why? Because your sympathy could become hope to him. Even the smallest kindness would be magnified into a sign of love in his mind. With people like that, if you cannot give them everything, then don't give them even a little. Cecilia looked at me. That sounds cruel, but it's true. So now you know what to do. I know. What? Don't pity him. Don't contact him. Don't think about him. Completely delete him from my memory. As quickly as you deleted his chat history. Even faster than that. Chapter 17. 2 months later. Ben. Do you know what today's date is? October 17th. No, I mean, do you know what else today is? I thought for a moment. What? Today is exactly 2 months since the day Jonathan added me on WeChat. My hand paused halfway while pouring tea. You still remember that? Of course I remember. Why? Because that day was the test of my marital boundaries, and I got a perfect score. I laughed. Cecilia walked over and leaned against my shoulder. Ben, do you know what the most important part of boundaries is? It's not how you deal with problems after they happen. It's preventing the problems from happening in the first place. I nodded. You've already done that. Not completely. Cecilia spoke seriously. The fact that Jonathan could add me on WeChat means my privacy settings weren't strict enough. The fact that he could find our address means the photos I posted revealed too much information. The fact that he got inside our home means I didn't reject him immediately. All of those things could have been handled better. You already did very well. Not well enough. Cecilia pulled out her phone and tapped a few times. Look. She handed the phone to me. It was the WeChat privacy settings page. Under Ways to add me, every option had been turned off. Phone number search disabled. WeChat ID search disabled. Group chat adding disabled. QR code scanning disabled. From now on, nobody can find my WeChat through any method. Except you. I looked at her. Then how are you supposed to add new friends in the future? I don't need new friends. I already have enough friends. More than enough. One extra person would just feel like wasted energy. I looked into her eyes for 3 seconds. Then I turned around and wrapped my arms around her tightly. Cece. Have I ever told you that marrying you was the best deal of my life? You have. And was I right? Yes. She laughed softly and leaned back against the chair. I also think marrying you was worth it. Why? Because you trust me. When Jonathan said all those things, you didn't lose your temper. You didn't interrogate me. You just looked into my eyes and asked one question. Cece, what's going on? That single sentence alone told me you trusted me. If you had immediately exploded in anger or started questioning me, I might have felt that after 5 years of marriage, we didn't even have the most basic trust. And then I might really have considered Jonathan's proposal. Not because I liked him, but because I would have felt that you didn't love me enough. I froze for a moment. Seriously? Seriously? Trust is the highest form of love. You love me, so you trust me, and because I trust you too, I never once considered leaving with him. Not even for a second. The wind drifted in from the balcony, stirring Cecilia's hair. I reached out and tucked the strands behind her ear. Cece. For the rest of our lives, we have to stay like this. We have to keep trusting each other and protecting our boundaries together. We won't give anyone the opportunity to destroy our family. Cecilia looked at me, her eyes shining. Okay.